Hi everyone, and welcome back to the My Favorite Things YouTube channel. This is Mindy Egan, and in today's video, we are going to dress up our die cuts with some background stamps and ink blending. I'm going to start by creating my background, and to do this, I am using the Four Corners background stamp. I'm using my Misty tool to stamp this, so I removed the foam insert of my Misty tool. Then I prepped my white cardstock with an anti-static powder tool, and I'm inking up this background in Versamark ink, so just a clear, sticky ink. And then after I stamp that background down, I'm sprinkling on some clear embossing powder. This is going to trap the white of the cardstock underneath and just leave it really nice and shiny. And then I can heat set this with my heat tool. For ink blending, I'm going to be using Distress Oxides in Tumbled Glass, Broken China, and Seedless Preserves. I'm starting at one end of my cardstock, blending on the tumbled glass. And I'm going to go about a third of the way up. It doesn't have to be a perfect blend. You don't have to worry too much about how well it blends to the next color, because once we start die cutting, it's really not going to matter. Next, I'm bringing in the Broken China. So I'm bringing that about halfway down my cardstock, and I actually blend by starting off on the side of the cardstock, so laying down that strip of color. And notice I am using just a regular blending tool for this. Whenever I'm doing full backgrounds, I like to use the foam blending tools. I just feel I get better coverage and I don't have to work as hard. Then I'm going to come in with these Seedless Preserves. So I just flipped my cardstock, starting at that other end, and I'm going to bring that up to meet the Broken China. I do go back and forth a little bit just so I can get rid of those circular marks that the foam blending tool is leaving and just help that transition just a little bit. That color that's created between the Seedless Preserves and the Broken China is just a really, really pretty color that's added to the background. So after I have everything blended and I'm happy with the look, I'm going to go ahead and take a rag and just buff off any of that excess ink that's sitting on top of my heat embossed background. And that's going to really help make that white of the background pop off the card. Then to add just a little bit of interest to this, I'm just taking a spritz bottle, and this has some just plain water in it, and I'm going to spritz my background so it's going to leave those water droplet marks. I'm going to let it sit for just a few seconds, and then I'll pick up those water droplets with a paper towel. Then I'm going to take this Greenery die set. This is the solid die set that My Favorite Things offers. There's also, I believe, an outline. I'm just using the solids, and I'm kind of playing a little bit of Tetris on this background. I'm trying to get in as many die cut pieces as I can with this background and just making sure they stretch across some of the variations in color on that background. And I am going to use a low tack tape to hold those dies in place so they don't shift around, and I don't want the dies to get on top of each other because that would ruin my dies. So after I die cut those first pieces, I'm just coming back in, playing a little bit of Tetris, and now I have all of my die cut pieces from this background. And I didn't intend it, but I really liked how everything laid out. I wasn't planning my background out, but this piece really worked out well. So I'm taking just a rectangle die, and I'm going to hold that over a piece of the background that I really like the layout of. And so I will die cut that out. And I also die cut out a piece of black cardstock so that it fits perfectly behind that background. And I'm going to layer this on top of a piece of white cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So technically this background piece is cut to 4 by 5 1/4. I thought about popping it up with some foam squares, but that sounded just way too tedious. So I am just taking a tape runner and going over that entire background. If I had been thinking about it ahead of time, I would have put a double-sided adhesive on the back, or like a sheet of double-sided adhesive, but I really hadn't planned this card. This was an unexpected card. So then I just attached that to that black piece of cardstock, and I love that black coming through those die cuts. Now to add a little bit of dimension, I'm throwing on some foam tape to the back of this piece, and then I'm going to add this to my white card base. Then I'll just set this off on the side, and I'm going to go back to the original card idea that I was planning to do for this video, which is actually using the die cut pieces of that background. So first I'm going to kind of intensify my background a little bit by using one of my new favorite stamps, which is the brush Splatter. And I'm going to heat emboss this on black cardstock. So I'm taking that off. This is a clear stamp, so I do have my foam insert back in my Misty. And I'm going to prep this cardstock with that anti-static powder tool again. And I'm going to ink up my brush splatter background with the Versamark ink again. Now this time, I'm going to sprinkle on some gold embossing powder, so it's really dressing up the background. Then after I tap off all of that excess, I'm going to heat set this with my heat tool. This piece currently measures 4¼ by 5½. I like to start out with a regular size piece of cardstock, and then I can trim it down to whatever size I need. Once my background is heat embossed, I'm going to start just arranging my die cut pieces on the front of the card, and I'm actually going to mimic the previous card. I just really had liked how that was arranged, even though I didn't plan it. So one thing I will say is if you do plan on doing this, another smart tip to do is to take some press and seal and place it over the top of your background. That way everything is held in place just where you want it, and you can just add adhesive to the back of your die cut pieces. I did not think of that right away, so I am attaching them individually, and you can see that I had bumped it and kind of shifted things around. I still made it work, but it would just have been a lot easier if I had used that press and seal. After everything is arranged and adhered down, I'm going to trim off any of the excess pieces with my scissors, and then I'm going to take that rectangle die again, and I'm going to die cut this out so it's going to measure the 4 by 5¼ like my other card. After that's die cut, I will take the foam tape and I'm going to apply that to the back of the cardstock again so I can add that little bit of dimension. And then I'll remove the backing of the foam tape and add that to my white card front that measures 4¼ by 5½. So here we have two very similar designs, but totally different looks to these cards. Now, what's really great about these designs is you can turn these cards into any type of greeting card that you want. I seem to never really have enough birthday cards on hand, so I'm going to use the Balloon Bouquet stamp set. I'm choosing 2 sentiments off of there to add to my cards, and I'm just going to stamp them on white cardstock using the MFT Extreme Black ink. Then off screen, I'm just going to trim these down into some smaller sentiment strips. And I'm going to have a little angle on one end of them. Then I'm taking foam tape and just adding that to the back of each of the sentiments. And I'm going to add these to the front of the card, one towards the top and one towards the bottom. So this is just a really fun way to add more interest to your cards and get more use out of your dies. This happens to be an individual die, but you can look at any of your coordinating dies that have some really great shapes or that you can turn into silhouettes and just add a pattern to the background. And now I have to admit, I think my unplanned card may be my favorite, which is the one with the black silhouettes popping through. Which one is your favorite? Let us know down in the comments. Thank you so much for joining today. I hope this has inspired you, and I'll see you again real soon.